Today we celebrate the ultimate harbinger of spring and one of the most reliable perennials in the garden. You don't want to miss it, so stay tuned as we garden smart. For many gardeners, spring starts when the daffodils bloom, regardless of what the calendar says. They signal the end of the long, cold winter and the rebirth of the garden. They're a symbol of hope and joy. There's perhaps no finer place on earth to enjoy the humble daffodil than Gibbs Gardens, who was recently named one of the best daffodil destinations in the world by Flower Magazine. Jim Gibbs has been planting daffodils for over 20 years and now has amassed over 20 million daffodils across a 50-acre outdoor cathedral designed for the sole purpose of letting their stark beauty be enjoyed in a special way. Jim Gibbs is a brilliant horticulturalist and an expert garden designer, and today he's going to unlock the secrets to designing with daffodils and having success in your garden growing this amazing bulb. Jim, one of the things I love about visiting beautiful gardens is that it inspires me to take something amazing that I've seen and try to translate it in a smaller way into my own garden, because there's just so much that we can learn. It's why public gardens, I think, are so important and an amazing educational resource. And seeing these enormous drifts of daffodils has me so excited about finding some areas in my garden where I can really create some dynamic shows of color and really start incorporating these cool season bulbs into my garden, which are not well represented right now. So for the home gardener, let's start all the way from the beginning. What do we need to be thinking about if we want to put in, a dynamic bulb display? And let's start by talking about the soil, which is very important for bulbs.
Well, for daffodils, of course, you want a soil that has a pH of between 6 and 7. 6.5 is perfect. If it's acidic, it's going to be below 7, and if it's alkaline, it's above 7.
Right.
You don't want to get it too alkaline, so you got to be doing pH test on it. It needs to be about 6.5 to do well. So the first thing to do is do a pH on your soil and check it. The next thing you want to do is begin to think about the bed that you're going to prepare to plant the daffodils or tulips or pansies in. Now, when you think about that, you want to have good drainage. So it's better to work the soil up and mound it slightly in the middle.
Right.
So the water drains both sides. Now, after you do that, you want to think about mixing in some topsoil, some sand, compost, mix them all together, work them into the existing clay. And it's easier to plant daffodils and tulips when the ground isn't as compacted. So
Right.
That's good to do too.
Yeah, and compacted soil can be very problematic with bulbs, and a lot of that's due to the fact that they don't like soggy soil too. And if you don't have good drainage, you're going to definitely have problems growing daffodils, tulips, many of the bulbs that we really like to plant this time of year.
Without good drainage, they're going to die. All the bulbs will rot.
What are the best sites for daffodils and tulips for the bulbs that we may want to plant?
If you are planting daffodils where there's some tree borders, you want to use only early and early mid daffodils. The reason is they've got to have time to have the green foliage turn yellow or brown. That when you see it yellow, you know there's enough food nourishment in that bulb to produce a bloom for the next year. So it's very important to not ever cut the green foliage. Some people cut it, it won't bloom the next year.
So let's talk about the way that we think about in smaller plantings using drifts of color and incorporating earlies, mids, late, and maybe even incorporating those into beds that would have other bulbs like tulips represented.
All of the daffodils are planted in curves, drifts. Once you get your curves in place and decide where to plant the daffodils, you can begin to mix companion plants such as pansies do great with daffodils and tulips.